dummy am I? But I'll tell you what, I don't actually think I'm a dummy. And you know who else I don't think is a dummy? Darko Rajakovic. And Darko Rajakovic took a lot of strays from a channel called Awful Coaching. Okay. And I'm positive that at some point we're probably going to get a whole bunch of people from Awful Coaching coming here defending their king. And I understand what this channel is about. A lot of people referenced it. A lot of people said, hey, Rob, have you seen this video breaking down the Raptors defense against the Miami Heat and how terrible a coach Darko Rajakovic is, because this pseudo online coach who has over 150,000 subscribers decided to go on a rant in which he alleged that Darko Rajakovic is mentally challenged, that Darko Rajakovic doesn't know what he's doing, that the Raptors are officially an embarrassment to the NBA, that this Raptors defense is why the NBA is losing ratings. First of all, I got news for you, Mr. Awful Coaching. The Raptors had one game on national television, and that just got revoked. Their January 8th game against the New York Knicks has been pulled. So they don't have any games on national TV. Trust me, the Raptors are not why the NBA is losing viewers. Part of it is cable cutting. I found this to be particularly interesting opportunity, perhaps, to address a big elephant in the room, which is how good a coach do I actually think Darko Rajakovic is? How can you at home judge that when the Raptors aren't necessarily trying to win? What exactly is it that the Toronto Raptors are even trying to do? What are they doing? What is MIG? What is this stuff? I'm going to try to say this delicately. There's levels to this. Okay. There's levels to this. There's pro coaches, there's amateur coaches, there's AAU coaches, there's college coaches, there's Division 1, Division 2, Division 3, high school. And then there's people who think they can coach, people who think they can play, people who've never maybe picked up a basketball and have no idea what they're talking about, but they read a book. They read a book on basketball. I'll tell you something. I did a lot of low-light films on Fred VanVleet, and one of the biggest criticisms that I got back was, you have no idea how hard this is in real time. I accept that I was wrong on a lot of things that I said about Fred VanVleet back then, because honestly, let me start with one thing first. There's no defense for great offense in the NBA. These are the best players in the world. You can talk about hedge and recover. You got to ice the screen. But when you're talking about Anthony Edwards and you're talking about Jalen Brunson and Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, I'm sorry, it doesn't work. I'd love to tell you there's good defense, there's better defense, but great offense will always beat that defense. Now, I don't particularly think that Awful Coaching was necessarily even wrong in saying that the Raptors played poor defense against the Miami Heat. Hell, I called it out myself. There were switches that were not made. There were gaps that were not sealed. There were a lot of, botched transition plays. And so, there's some fair point here. But I do want to say, if you took that video as gospel, if you took it as analysis, if you took it as a balanced, nuanced, serious critique of Darko Rajakovic and this coaching staff, you're nuts. You're nuts. You have a lot to learn about basketball, and you're just, frankly, just out to lunch, because it's satire. That is satire. To the number of people who have messaged me with that video and said, Rob, what do you think of this awful coaching breaking down the Raptors defense? And it's like, bro, it should be a pretty telltale sign when a person can't pronounce 6 names of the players that they're covering. He couldn't pronounce Precious Achiuwa in another video I watched of him. Yves Missy? Bro, come on now. How do you not know Masai Ujiri's pronunciation? He's one of the most popular, most in-demand, most talked about executives. You can't have watched even 6 games of NBA basketball and convince me otherwise that you have. So, you got a guy who's spazzing out. He's very angry. He's very animated, and he's talking a lot of basketball terms. And so I don't doubt that you'd be seduced into thinking he makes some sense. And of course, there's something very seductive when a person breaks down a defensive play and says, look at this terrible defense, and then the offensive player scores. But I got news for you. The 08 Celtics were awesome. Team scored 100+ points on them routinely. Okay. The current OKC Thunder are frigging awesome defense. Teams score well over 100 points against them. In the NBA, offense will always have the advantage over the defense. There's no shutouts. This ain't high school. There's not, you're never going to see a game where it's going to be like 108-12. Okay. That's just not going to happen. It's never going to happen. You can set your clock to that. It's not happening unless Sam Hinkie is in charge of another team at some point. It's just not going to happen. And I think that it's really important to realize what you're listening to is garbage. Okay. You really need to decipher that. And I'm not necessarily even trying to go at a bigger content creator or whatever, because Lord knows I've had plenty of issues with other content creators, shout outs, Legend of Winning, and plenty of others. But what I'm trying to say is don't take that video for gospel. Now, I'm not going to play the video. And if you desperately want to go and see it, if you really want to waste, 10 minutes listening to a guy say over and over that Darko Rajakovic, a man who has been coaching professionally and on a very high level since he was in his late teens, if you want to listen to that guy call him mentally challenged, by all means go ahead, but please stop DMing me with that video. It's trash. Now I'll use this opportunity to talk about Mig. I'll talk about the Raptors defense, and I'll apologize in advance if I'm a little bit discombobulated and a little bit disorganized, because I haven't slept in a really long time. I've been up since 7 a.m. yesterday. I'm going on 22 hours of no sleep. I was about to go to sleep, and I finally decided to just click on that video and watch it through, and I just had to respond to this. The Toronto Raptors have personnel issues defensively. Clearly. Okay. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. You don't have the personnel to be a top 10, top 12 defense. What do you have the personnel to be is a roughly mediocre defense. Okay. It's worth noting that with Scotty Barnes in the lineup, that's pretty much what you are. You're the 16th ranked defense with him. You're the 24th to 25th ranked defense without him. And I do think that it's worth noting that there's probably going to be a fall off when you get fully healthy, because Emmanuel Quickley will play more minutes. He hasn't been great defensively. And so, maybe the personnel right now, given where your rookies are in terms of experience, they'll get better. Probably like at best, you could be 15th at best. That's if you're actually trying to stop teams, but that's not what the Raptors are doing. So I think that it's first keep the first thing the first thing. You don't have the personnel to be a top 10 defense. You simply don't. You have a lot of leaky avenues. I think Grady Dick has proven to be a somewhat incompetent defender at times, although willing to try at times. He dies on a lot of screens. He doesn't move very overly well laterally. You have issues with RJ Barrett defensively, clearly, transition at the rim. You are consistently smaller than other teams. I think that matters. You have a big who does not do well on switches and has been routinely cooked by Tyrese Halliburton and many guards on a switch. So you prefer to play drop coverage with Jakob Poeltl. And of course, drop coverage opens you up to a ton of threes. If you want a good little review on this, go listen to the JJ Redick podcast, where he has Damian Lillard on when he's talking about what happens when a big goes drop coverage on you and what does that do for you. And he's like, it's a green light. I'm going to shoot, I'm going to go right into it. There's a lot of complications when it comes to defense, but I think that the first things first, Raptors don't necessarily have the personnel. But do they have the personnel to be better than they are? 100% they have the personnel to be better than they are. Now, here's the question. If offense always has the advantage, how does defense compete at the NBA level? Trade-offs, concessions. If you're a coach in the NBA, it's a very different equation than being a coach in high school, okay? When you want to talk about high school basketball, yeah, you can shut down players in high school basketball. They're not good enough. And if you have the personnel, you could probably do it. But in the NBA, you're not shutting anybody down. You're not shutting down stars. You're not shutting down offenses. You're not going to shut down Nikola Jokic. It's just not going to happen. Okay. You'll do everything right, and he's still going to score 28 points. So the goal in the NBA is just make things hard, to make things a little less efficient, to make things a little uncomfortable, to delay certain things, right? So you're just trying to buy seconds. You want to force players to go away from their comfort zones. It doesn't mean that because you force a left-handed driver right, that he's going to miss 100% of his layups. That's ridiculous. Maybe you do that in middle school, it'll happen that way. Maybe you can do it in college on some level, maybe Division 3, but you're not going to do that in the NBA. RJ Barrett can score with his right hand on just about any defender in the league one-on-one. So it's not like, oh, he's a lefty, he's a left-hand merchant only. Okay. So what I'm trying to say is that you pick and choose. Now, the Oklahoma City Thunder have one of the brightest coaches in the NBA, Mark Dagnall. I love that dude. He chose, in order to make certain things possible and other things less possible, they chose to leave PJ Washington open for a lot of threes. PJ Washington and Jarrett Jones, they were like, hey, this is our game plan in the playoffs. If PJ Washington and Derrick Jones are going to beat us, then we're willing to live with that. And guess what? PJ Washington and Derrick Jones beat them. But PJ Washington didn't shoot like that against anybody else. Okay. So maybe it was lucky. Maybe it was a fluke. Maybe it was a miscalculation. I don't think it was a miscalculation. I think it was a smart move. It just didn't pay off. And that's going to happen a lot in the NBA. Sometimes you're going to take a gamble, right? You're going to ice the screen and Jalen Brunson is going to draw a foul out of that. Or you're going to go under the screen thinking, oh, 34 feet. He's not going to pull from here and he's going to pull from there. Okay. Offense has all the advantages. The refs make sure of it. All the foul baiting, all the flopping. Offense has been significantly prioritized by the NBA, by the rules, by the refs, etc. Offensive players are protected. Defensive players are abused by the refs. Okay. So it's really difficult to actually do some of the things that this guy wants you to do. But it's important to realize what is the measure of a defense is only, did you do what you were trying to do? Right? Did you accomplish what you were trying to do? Now, if the goal of your defense, let me just put this into terms that are easier to understand. Let's say I am a coach who's going to coach against the Toronto Raptors. Okay? I'm going to coach against the Toronto Raptors. So I'm devising my scouting report with my assistant coaches. And one of the things that we're looking at is who to cover, who to leave. Who do I sink off the gap? Because again, when you think about, let's just consider I'm the opposing coach. Please bear with me. I promise I'm going to get there. I might take a little bit longer because I'm very tired, but I just want to get this off my chest. So let's say the offensive possession is starting with Scotty Barnes at the top, right? With RJ Barrett sort of fanned out to the wing, and you got Grady Dick in the opposite corner, and you got Jakob Poeltl and Davion Mitchell. Okay. Now, I'm pretty much going to sag off of Davion Mitchell. Okay. I'm going to ask my defender, his defender, to be more of a roamer and not really pay attention to him unless he cuts to the basket. So he's going to be kind of just ignored a little bit. Ignoring him is going to allow me to sink into Scotty's driving lane. Now I'm going to ask the defender who is guarding Scotty Barnes to funnel him towards Davion Mitchell. I'm gonna ask him to funnel him towards the help. I'm gonna say, you push him left towards Davion because now I can offer help. Because if you push him right towards Grady, I can't help because it's too far a gap. And Scotty is too quick and too good a passer. Grady's too good a shooter. I can't have that. So now they're going to do everything in their power as the Raptors. Again, I'm the opposing coach. They're the Toronto Raptors, to make sure that he does not go towards Davion. So this is a constant tussle between offensive and defensive coordinators and coaches, which is, I'm trying to force you into something. Now, let's just say I accomplish what I wanted, which is I force him away and I force him towards the help. And I'm sinking off of Davion to offer help on the Scotty drive. And what happens is Scotty dishes to Davion and he hits a three. What I would say as the assistant coach or the coach coaching against the Raptors is, I would clap and say, bravo, Davion Mitchell. But I would not be upset with that. That's what I wanted to happen. He's an NBA player, and occasionally he's going to hit some threes. Now, what happens if he hits 3 or 4 in like 2 minutes? I might have to adjust, but I'm probably not going to adjust. I'm going to play out the percentages. I'm going to trust that a guy who's been shooting under 30% for most of his career is going to not beat me. And if he does beat me that game, well, better him than Scotty, better him than Grady, better him than Jakob Pertl. That's the trade off. That's what I'm thinking as a coach. You know what awful coaching is going to say? He's going to scream and scream and scream. How can you leave Davion Mitchell open? He just burned you for 3. That's the problem. Now that we have settled that defense is only going to be measured relative to what you were trying to do in the first place, I do have a question. What do you think, watching the Toronto Raptors, they are trying to do defensively? Everything about defense comes down to space. Everything. Whether we're talking about hedge and recover on a screen, whether we're talking about icing a pick and roll, whether we are talking about how far you're sinking into the gaps, whether we're talking about, particular coverages, zones, everything comes down to space. What is the space between the offense and the defense? What is the space between the offensive players? What is the space between the defensive players, right? The box and one, 2-3 zones. I mean, if you've played high school basketball at all, you understand these concepts, right? So, what I'm going to tell you is not a surprise. The Toronto Raptors are hiding a tank in a Trojan horse called their defense. I don't want to raise too much attention about this because it seems that if I talk too much about something, it becomes a bit of a talking point around Raptorland. And I don't necessarily think that I necessarily even care to have players or coaches, having to answer these questions. I don't even want to bring it up, which is why I'm doing this at 5:18. I don't want this video to blow up. I want very few people to watch it. I know the diehards in our community watch every single video. So they're going to watch this video and the average person isn't, which is great because this becomes a public video that pretty much stays in house. Okay. The Raptors pick up like so high. Their pickup point is insanely high. Okay. They are trying to go over screens at like 42 feet. Why? And they're getting beat. Okay. They're getting beat bad. And when Scotty isn't there, and when Jonathan Mobo isn't there, and when specifically that combination of players isn't there, there's nobody to recover. There's nothing. So you can talk all you want about Davion's point of attack defense. You can talk all you want about the theory of Jacoby Walter. You can talk what you want about the rim protection and versatility of Ochai Agbaji. You can talk about Scotty Barnes and his defensive impact, and it has been immense. You can talk about it all, but you're giving too much space. There's way too much space. Now, what do I mean? I would bring up those. Sure. Dr. Dredd, I don't think you're right. I think Darko Rajakovic has a little bit more in the tank than you might be giving him credit for, but sure, they'll give him a crack at it. I promise you. He'll get a couple cracks at the playoffs, and if he fails miserably, they'll look to change. But I don't think they're going to change him up. I think he's here for the long haul. Okay. So think about this. What is the gap between two defenders is a really big part of your equation defensively, right? So when Jakob Pertl has a foot in the paint and Davion Mitchell or Jamal Shed or Scotty Barnes or Ochai Agbaji or RJ Barrett are trying to pressure the ball handler at 46 feet, do you see how much real estate there is for the offensive player to navigate? Now, if it's a dynamic score like a Tyler Hero or someone like that, or a Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, they're going to kill you. That's too much space. It's too much open terrain. And you don't have anybody on your team with the talent level defensively to play this way. I mean, when I say that, I mean, if you had OG Anunoby, the Nick Nurse Raptors, OG, Pascal, Scotty, Fred, Okay, this is a friggin' awesome defensive unit. Okay, that's four pretty good defenders. Pascal was, his interest waned and ebbed and flowed, but Pascal is still like a pretty solid defender back then. Okay, 3 years ago, he was still pretty okay. So when you talk about that type of defense, you can compensate for one loose end, which is Gary Trent Jr. in that defensive lineup. And so Gary just plays a role, and that role results in a lot of steals, but the steals are effectively he's benefiting a lot of steals because of the pressure that Scotty and OG are doing and making ball handlers uncomfortable. And so you can sort of play this very aggressive, choppy style of defense. But in most cases, if you were coaching the Raptors to win, you would never play this way because you don't have the personnel to win this way. There's no business that RJ Barrett has trying to contain a live dribble at 42 feet. He's going to get beat every single time. What awful coaching doesn't tell you is that lateral quickness and athletic tools are a thing. He's going to say, "Oh, he should have rotated." What is that? What is that going to do? What is RJ Barrett rotating at the rim going to do to anything? He's not a shot blocker. He's not going to stop him. I watched an entire breakdown where he was breaking down the Indiana Pacers series against the New York Knicks, and he kept harping on Tyrese Halliburton and just saying like, "Oh, Halliburton, he's giving too much space here." And it's like, yeah, that's what Halliburton does, bro. He's a bad defender. Why is Rick Carlisle catching strays for it? Rick Carlisle knew how to coach defensively for years. And then he coached Tyrese Halliburton, and suddenly he don't know how to coach defense anymore. There's some real lunatics on the internet. And unfortunately, the platform lends itself to a lot of followers, I guess. I'm not saying unfortunately, I'm very much a benefactor of it myself. But what I'm trying to say is that you need to use your own critical thinking here. Just because somebody gets online and says this person's a terrible, terrible this because of this, and then they show you like four stats in one clip to show it, I don't agree with that. So the first thing was the Raptors don't necessarily have the personnel. The second thing is they're not really playing a style of defense that is designed to win. Now, a lot of Raptors media people kind of caught on to this Darko term, MIG, most important guy. Okay. This is cap. Wow. I'm sorry. I'm not trying to blast Darko, but this is next level stupidity. And that's not I shouldn't do these things when I'm sleepy. Let me clarify what I'm saying. He's not stupid for doing it. People are stupid because they don't understand it. Does that make sense? Am I being too blunt? Oh my lord. People always say, "Rob, you never smile and you say these very serious things and then, people don't like you very much." Okay. The Raptors defense right now is basically a training course. That's all it is. Is not designed to stop anybody. Okay. Teams that are trying to win basketball games don't play defense that is divorced from the personnel that they have. Okay. It's just not why would you do that? You don't ask Brooke Lopez to guard 28 feet from the basket. You just don't. I've given the analogy of the weighted vest and the ankle weights many times, but to anyone who hasn't heard it, this is what the Raptors are doing right now. They're pushing people outside of their comfort zones in the name of development, but cloaked within the development of young players, roster, etc., is a tank. Okay. Because let me tell you what I would do if I had Shaquille O'Neal and Kobe Bryant, right? And my goal was to win basketball games. I would put the ball in their hands. I would have Kobe ISO a lot. I would dump the ball into Shaq. I would play very aggressive drop coverage with Shaquille O'Neal. I would not have Shaquille O'Neal trying to shoot threes. But if my mandate was to lose as many games, I might say this is the season where Shaquille O'Neal is going to try turnaround jump shots and Kobe Bryant is going to try being the low man and a lot of defensive coverages. And I want Shaq to get better on the perimeter. So I'm occasionally going to ask Shaq to recover onto shooters and close out to corners so that he gets really gassed and really exhausted. The Raptors the Raptors are geniuses. Hold on one second. I've lost my microphone here. Okay. The Raptors are geniuses. They're really smart. They have basically constructed a style of basketball that is designed to lose basketball games while simultaneously developing basketball players. There's one thing that you do when you're coaching a team is you get your team really exhausted and then you try to coach in the fourth quarter. They tell you do 20 S word. I don't want to say the word S suicides. Okay. They tell you to do 10 of those, right? And then shoot free throws. Why? So that you'll be in game, you'll be comfortable with that in the game. They tell you to get into a breaking sweat before you start shooting jump shots. They tell you to do the form shooting. Like, what I'm trying to say is that it helps long term. Working this hard defensively with very little effectiveness, by the way, is good for you. It's building up your awareness on the ball. It's not effective for winning basketball games, but it is certainly helping you to work on your rhythm defensively. It's helping you to, learn how to contain basketball in live situations. A lot of playoff basketball is going to basically break down to man to man. And so it's giving you some valuable reps in terms of that. Clearly, this has all been pre-constructed with Darko and Masai and the coaching staff. They're not idiots. They're not coaching to win basketball games right now. You don't understand that. Okay. If they were coaching to win basketball games, they wouldn't be picking up 90 feet 94 feet with this roster. You don't have enough. You don't have enough defensive personnel to play that way. So why would you play that way? You would never play that way. You wouldn't be carrying 5 rookies on your roster. You would have used your mid-level exception. You would have made trades that actually, benefited your team. You wouldn't be milking all these injuries. The tank is obvious. What's not obvious to people is what does the tank mean about the individual performances that we're witnessing out there? Specifically, what does this mean about who RJ Barrett is as a defender? Wait and see. Wait and see until you can actually put him in a position where he is going to be covered and not compensated for, yes, where he can be covered and compensated for in a scheme that is designed to his strengths. Okay. All of this running, all of this chasing around screens, all of this MIG shit is why the Raptors are committing so many turnovers and dying in the fourth quarter. It's why their jumpers become short. It's why they keep missing free throws. It's very obvious to anybody paying attention with 2 brain cells. It is pretty obvious that the Toronto Raptors are doing something which is very ethical, but also very obvious. They are tanking. This is an ethical tank. This is what it looks like. You play really hard, you run yourself ragged, and then you miss a bunch of free throws and jumpers in the fourth quarter, and nobody is none the wiser because it makes sense. That team played hard. You can't accuse them of tanking. And there's many ways to tank. One way to tank is to fake injuries. That's not very ethical. You can't not tell players that you're doing that. Certainly doesn't help the player. Fans become very angry and suspicious. Why is this guy suddenly shut down? I paid for tickets. That's not very nice. That's not very good for the PR. There's the other one, which is you trade away your good players. That's the Sam Hinkie special. You trade away your good players, and then just kind of sell fans on draft picks and hope. Well, that's not very good, and that's not a good winning strategy. Certainly, the Sixers haven't sniffed the finals, and they lost for many, many years. The Wizards haven't sniffed the finals. They've lost for many years. The Pistons haven't sniffed the finals since 2005. And they've been miserable for years. The Kings have not sniffed the finals in my lifetime. And they've been miserable for years as well. No, you need to build up. The way the Raptors are tanking is the best tank. Milking out injuries. Playing a style of basketball that is simultaneously developing while almost certainly designed to lose basketball games, and accepting the wins when they come. Now, are the Raptors coaching the same way against every team? No. There are certain games where certainly you can see that there is more of a game plan, more of a concerted effort to win, because those are the games that you actually want to win. Against Boston, against Cleveland, against OKC. Now, I believe me, I understand they got blown out by OKC. They got blown out by Cleveland. I understand that. But those are the games that you would actually try to employ some sort of competent strategy. That's the game where you would shore up your rotation and you wouldn't be playing 9 guys and maybe you'd be giving guys quick hooks. But against Charlotte in December, against the Bulls in December, nah, man. Let Davion Mitchell run point. Let Jamal Shed, have 12 minutes. Let Jacoby Walters shoot 2 for 9. I got no problem with any of it. Okay. So again, to reiterate everything, awful coaching is a clown. He is not good. He is, if he's entertaining to you, he wasn't entertaining to me. I could barely make it through a video. It is weird, but I get it. There's an audience for it, and power to that audience. But please don't take it as serious indictment of Darko Rajakovic's inability to coach or ability to coach. This is a very good coach. He's a very good coach. And you're seeing it in the development of these players. But don't think that because his job right now is development, that he can't coach the X's and O's. He's very clear on this. He can. Okay. This is a guy who can write a book on pick and roll. Okay. This is a guy who can design a very good offense. This is a guy who has a very forward thinking mind and is very collaborative and very open to learning new things. This is also a guy who learns new things every day. Okay. All of this projects very favorably to his long-term future as a Toronto Raptors coach. Do I think he'll be here when we win a championship? Who knows, man? I cannot guess that. Maybe he will be here when the Raptors are competing for championships. Maybe he'll have been replaced 2 times over by that point. I have no idea. What I do know is that awful coaching is not to be taken seriously. And if you've watched that video, then all I would say to you is take it with a grain of salt. He pretty much expects every single person to play the exact same defense. He doesn't give offense credit when offense is just too good. And I think at some point, what I will do, because tomorrow is my mom's death anniversary, and I usually take that day to just write, reflect, journal, think. What I will do is at some point throughout this month, as we get ready for Penn Dance prep, I'll find some time and we'll do a video just breaking down what the Raptors are doing defensively and why it is pretty much designed to fail. I just don't want to draw too much attention to it. You never know when you post something on YouTube how widespread it gets. And then suddenly, like you got all the players watching a video saying their defense is designed to lose and stuff. I don't necessarily think that benefits the Raptors at all. And there's something really big at play here for the Raptors, which is they have this really positive chemistry. They're losing the necessary games that they need to lose, and they might be getting a top 5 pick out of it. I think that that's all very important and all very good. And generally speaking, I'm very optimistic about all of it. So, do you think Scotty is trying to tank? First of all, nobody is trying to tank. There's no player that is trying to tank. No player has been given the mandate to die on a screen or go miss jump shots on purpose. No. It's not like that. Okay. It is mainly, I don't know what's going on with me. Like my hand is shaking. This is what happens when you don't sleep for 23 hours now. Mainly what I'm trying to say is that, oh my gosh, Josh saying, Rob, would you take Kenny Lofton Jr.? He'd be a great player behind Scotty. I used to be pretty high on Kenny Lofton Jr. I have since soured on him. His defense is really bad. Okay. And last I checked, Scotty's pretty much a point guard at this point, so I'm not necessarily sure that he would be behind Scotty. Anyways, you have witnessed a YouTuber at 5 a.m. who is probably 3 minutes away from crashing on the floor. And I just wanted to rant. I hope this video doesn't do very well, but I hope you hit like. Actually, don't hit like. Don't want you to hit like? No. Don't hit like. Okay, I'll talk to you guys later. Have a good one.